If you've been around the channel for a while, you'll know one of my main disciplines is racing hill climbs here in the UK. And one of the best things about hill climb racing is having a super light bike is actually a genuine performance advantage, unlike a lot of other disciplines. And this bike right here is my BMC hill climb machine. If you saw the video a couple of weeks ago, whilst this bike was super light racing last year, I want to get it even lighter for the 2026 season. And at the end of the last video, I've managed to get its weight down to a super impressive 5.37 kilos. But that's still too heavy for me. And I want to save another 370 grams to get this bike genuinely sub 5 kilos. And I'll be enlisting the help of my newly purchased Park Tool scale to help me get there and make sure these weights are legit. At the end of the last video, I was genuinely blown away by all the suggestions you'd left in the comments, with loads and loads of really great advice on how I can drop the weight of this bike even further. And there was actually one comment, pretty extreme, that dominated them all. Now, sorry to break it to you, but this episode, the drops will be staying firmly attached to my bike. I'm still not fully convinced about having a bike with chop drops. It almost seems too extreme for me even. But seeing as you're all so keen, I'll make you a deal. If by the end of the week, this video has 1,000 likes, I promise you I'll make another video where I'll grab the hacksaw, chop the drops off, and see just how much weight it saves. Another really popular suggestion was to sand down all the paint off this frame. However, if you take a look at the frame, you'll see there isn't actually much paint on it. It is mostly a bare carbon finish with a few little decals on it. And after weighing the frame without anything on when I first built it up, I really don't think there's much weight to be saved here. So I don't think it's worth going through all the hassle and risk of sanding down the frame to maybe save 20 grams. It is an exciting prospect and it is something I do want to try on other frames where there's layers worth of primer and really thick paint. But yeah, if you take a look at this frame set, it is pretty much a bare clear coat on top of carbon. So then what do you think? Can I get this BMC Team Machine SLR 01 from 2014 to weigh under 5 kilos? I have got a ton of super exciting upgrades for you today, and one I think I might live to regret, but you'll have to wait and see what that is. And of course, at the end of the video, I'm going to be throwing the bike back on the scales to see just how close to the 5 kilo mark we've managed to get. Right, I think it's time to throw some upgrades on the BMC. First up is one that maybe some of you would consider a downgrade, but after all the comments I've had about it in the last episode, I think it's something I've just got to do, and that is removing the OSPW from my rear mech. Now, I was running this cheap Chinese L2 OSPW, which I haven't had any issues with the shifting, just to put that out there. There's not been any downsides to it other than its weight. Now, it does add about, I think, 40 grams to the Ultegra rear mech. And as a lot of you pointed out, I don't think it really offers me any performance benefits. So I may as well just chuck it off there and have the weight saving instead. Even with your really expensive ceramic speed options, most people are rather dubious whether there is even any performance gains. So I don't think a cheap Chinese one is going to give me any benefit. I think the only other place I could save any weight from the rear mech would be, there are a couple of little steel screws still in it, like the limit screws, and now I could swap them to a titanium version, but that's going to cost a fortune, and we're talking fractions of a gram here. The one thing I could do is shop around on eBay and see if I can find an R90 150 rear mech that's about 40 grams lighter, and I have got some alerts set up, but I've not found one quite cheap enough yet. So you'll have to bear with me on that one. On to the next upgrade then, and this is also a bit of a weird one. This was one I'd planned to do well back in December 2024 when I first started this project. And actually I did run it for a while on the old wheels I had, and that was running a Maxxis High Road SL front and rear. So currently on the front, I've got a 28mm Maxxis High Road SL, but because of a weird issue with the wheels that I'll explain in a minute, on the rear, I've had to run a 25mm GP5000 out of my parts bin that is definitely past its sell-by date now. However, a big thing changed in part 1. In part one, I swapped the hanger that was on this bike from the stock BMC one to an AliExpress direct mount one, and it's miraculously fixed one of the biggest issues I've been having. As soon as I swapped the Dura Ace wheels this bike came with to these Elite Wheels edge hoops, I've been having an issue with how the wheel lines up in the chainstays, with it being way closer to one side than the other, meaning effectively I've got way less tyre clearance to work with. And I spent ages and ages and ages scratching my head, playing around with the end caps, trying to figure out what the problem was, and I never did. I tried the wheels in another frame, in several other frames actually, and they always ran perfectly true and perfectly in the centre. So it must have been some weird interaction between the exact hanger I had and the end caps on these wheels, and it was just something I couldn't fix. But all of a sudden, when I swapped this direct mount hanger, that issue's completely gone away, and I've got plenty of clearance to work with. So it means I can fit an Maxxis on the rear, and well, I've gone and done it, and it saves about 40 grams versus the old GP5000, which is already a light tyre. So yeah, I'm going to take that weight saving, and hopefully that switch to a 28 means I'm going to get a little bit better traction on the rubbish British roads around here that I'm often racing on, especially when it's wet. Sticking with the wheels, the next upgrade then is looking at the skewers. Originally, I was running these ZTTO titanium and aluminium skewers, which are a lot lighter than most wheel stock skewers. And I bought these because they were pretty solid and had really big end caps, which is not something that can be said about all of these ultralight skewers. However, I've just decided to go for the lightest ones I could find and picked up some risk ones off AliExpress that weigh in at under 40 grams. So I'm going to get them on the bike, and as long as I make sure I tighten them down properly, there shouldn't be any problems. Another upgrade I'm going to make is to the shifter clamps, and it's another little titanium hardware swap from probably what is one of my favourite AliExpress brands now, Risk. So the stock clamp, remembering I've got 2 of these to do, is 8.5 grams, and the Risk titanium setup is only 3.5 grams. So when I've done both, that's a 10 gram saving. And yeah, working perfectly and saved me 10 grams per shifter. So what's not to like there? And I know a lot of you commented as well on part one, suggesting I swap the clamp to a titanium one that comes with Dura Ace. Now, I did look online and they cost about 20 quid a clamp, so I might do that. But once I'm spending 40 quid, I've actually found sets of Dura Ace shifters as a pair going for about 100 quid on eBay. So I'm quite tempted to, instead of just buying the Dura Ace clamp, to just go full out and go full Dura Ace shifters, save me the full sort of 40 to 50 grams on the shifter pair. You'll have to let me know, along with the rear mech, whether you think it's worth me spending that money and getting the Dura Ace ones off eBay to save another 100 grams. Another upgrade that I'm following on from part one is an upgrade to these big rock cranks that I installed in part one. And in part one, I installed them with their stock spider and a 4-bolt chainring that I had lying around. Now, it was pretty light, I have to say, but it didn't save me much versus my SRAM Red chain set. However, it did fix the chain line in a quite considerable way. But because the cranks are set up to work with 3-bolt SRAM mounting chain rings, it means I can actually use direct mount chain rings. And I was looking online, and actually I was looking at AliExpress ones, but then I saw E13, who are a brand that makes loads of aftermarket drivetrain stuff, were actually selling off all their SRAM 3-bolt stuff because SRAM generally don't use that mounting standard anymore. They've moved on to their 8-bolt system. So I picked up an E13 34-tooth direct mount chainring that weighs in the region of 66 grams, which should save me quite a considerable amount versus the separate setup I was using originally. And I don't know about you, but I think it looks a lot cleaner with the new setup. And now we're on to a big one, and it is the cassette. Now, I've been using one of these Speed Owl, they were formerly known as S-Road cassettes, for quite a long time now, and it's really, really good. It's all one piece of steel, and compared to that old ZTTO cassette I had, not had any durability issues. The big downside though, this weighs quite considerably more at around 180 grams versus that ZTTO cassette, which I think was something ridiculous, like 113 grams. So no wonder it didn't last very long. But ever since them videos where that ZTTO cassette failed, ZTTO have actually gone back to the drawing board, and apparently they've improved that SLR Gen 3 cassette, increasing its weight a little bit, but also, in theory, increasing its durability. Now, I'm developing a bit of Stockholm syndrome for these ultra lightweight cassettes, and I know I never learned my lesson, but after the success I had with the Speed Hour 1, I thought it's only fair I give ZTTO another shot, and I've picked up one of the new generation of their ultralight SLR Gen 3 cassettes. Hopefully improved ZTTO cassette 127.1, which you can see is about 15 grams heavier than the first generation of this one that I put on the bike originally, but unfortunately failed pretty disastrously. I guess we're just gonna have to see if it lasts, but it is offering me a massive weight saving, so I'm gonna stick it on the bike, and hopefully by dropping down to that 34 tooth chainring, as I mentioned earlier, I won't be using the big aluminium sprockets as much. You never know, it might last a little bit longer. But when you put in 400 or 500 watts through your cassette doing a hill climb race, you know, you are absolutely torture testing it. So the jury's out on whether that's gonna survive. I will keep you updated though, if there are any issues. Let me be the guinea pig, and I'm not gonna recommend it just yet though. The last drivetrain upgrade, or maybe more optimization, that I want to talk about is what I've done with the chain. Now, this chain was actually the original chain that came on this bike, and fortunately it was pretty much brand new when I got it. But as I explained in part 1, I was still a bit hesitant to absolutely commit to 1x only with this bike. 2x's dead to me on the hill climb bike, going 1x only. So that means I can stop being silly and paranoid about shortening the chain too short, so I wouldn't be able to run 2x again, and get it cut down to the correct length for the gearing I've got. And now with my 30 on the rear, 34 tooth chainring on the front, that should be quite a lot shorter than the 2x equivalent. And actually, putting the bit of chain that I've just chopped off on the scales, I'm really quite impressed with how much weight it's saved. You know, considering it's a free upgrade, and I think I could go further still. When I'm in my 30, 34, there's still loads of space left in that cage. However, I don't want to push it too far, because maybe like I've still got this toxic trait of not wanting to shorten my chain, but I do still want the option of a 38. And I don't want to have to buy another Dura Ace chain, because they cost a fair bit, especially the 11 speed ones that are a little bit harder to find now. And I think that might just about be it for all the upgrades in this episode. So we're on to the bit you've all been waiting for. Let's find out just how much weight I have saved off the BMC. But before we do that, can I please ask you to hit that like button, remembering if we get to 1,000 likes, yes, I'm gonna get a hacksaw onto these drops, and we're gonna go dropless. And while you're at it, get yourself subscribed, because I am on a big push to try and get to that 10,000 subscribers mark as soon as possible. If you want to have a look at any of these products yourself, I'll leave some links to them in the description below. Any AliExpress links are affiliated, so if you did buy something with one of my links, it does support the channel. However, as I've said, I'm not quite ready to endorse all the parts yet that I've used, especially that cassette, so you'll have to bear with me on that one. Here we go then, the moment of truth. Oh, 5.2 on the dot. I was hoping to get a little bit closer to that 5 kilo mark. So it is a little bit painful to see it. Still 200 grams I've got to save. But I guess we are trending in the right direction. So despite not saving quite as much as I was hoping, we have still knocked 170 grams off. So we are getting closer to that all-important 5 kilo mark. And I'm not done yet. I am determined to get this bike down under 5 kilos. So there will be a part 3, and I've already started shopping for that. I've actually bought a custom ultralight seat clamp, and I've got an even lighter crankset on its way as well, which I'm really excited to take a look at when it finally arrives. As I said before, you'll have to let me know in the comments if you've got any suggestions. I've already taken a few on board for this one, and remember that promise, 1,000 likes within the week, and the drops are going too, which maybe will save me actually some decent weight. We'll have to see. And yes, I'm gonna dress it. I know there's no pedals on it. they're going to add, you know, some ultralight pedals, add about 200 grams, or if I'm running my power meter, it's about 300 grams. So it does mean at least with my power meter pedals, we are now just about under that 5.5 kilo mark, which is really exciting actually. All right then, we're nearly done now. You're gonna have to let me know what you think of this build because I'm getting really impressed with it. And as annoying as this chasing 5 kilos is, as painfully difficult as it's seeming to be, I'm getting there now. I'm getting closer. And in part 3, I'm determined to not stop until we hit that 5 kilo mark. So whatever you do, make sure you don't miss it. And until then, I'll see you all in the next one.